In the world of pain treatment, morphine is considered the gold standard, one of the strongest and most effective drugs available. But in some countries, getting access to morphine and the relief it brings is nearly impossible. The journalism school at the University of British Columbia spent nearly a year investigating why that is. And tonight, we have this special report.
In a remote village in the Ukrainian countryside sits a small cottage, run down, isolated, and desolate. It's the home where Artur Shumanov has gone to die. Artur is one of those many who are living in pain because they can't get access to painkillers. As part of a worldwide investigation into this problem, a group of my graduate students from the University of British Columbia School of Journalism visited Ukraine to see how and why so many people are living in agony. Our first stop was the home of this former decorated KGB colonel. Artur has stage 4 prostate cancer, and because of strict narcotics laws, he has limited access to morphine, a standard in pain treatment. Artur has found his own way to dull the pain. But the relief never lasts long. So Artur decided to leave his family in Ukraine to spare them from watching him suffer.
The under-treatment of pain is actually, I think, a huge issue. In the Ukraine, people are actually saying pain is part of life.
Dr. James Cleary is a leading authority on global palliative care. We invited him to join us in Ukraine to give us a sense of the problem.
Because of his pain, he's cut himself off from his family. He doesn't want them to visit there in Kiev. What greater time is there for a man to need his family than when he's facing advanced disease? But what did he say? He didn't want them to see him cry.
Dietrich Lohmann of Human Rights Watch says it's Ukraine's old Soviet mindset of countless bureaucratic procedures and impractical limits on doses that keep people in pain.
What you see in Ukraine is that 4 doctors have to sign off on every prescription of morphine. I mean, 50 milligrams is the maximum per day in Ukraine. Here in the US, there are people who will get thousands of milligrams every 4 hours.
Part of the problem is the global war on drugs. Morphine is nearly identical to heroin, and so it's under strict controls. So many patients aren't getting the morphine they really need.
In the course of the war on drugs that we've been fighting for the last few decades, what has been happening is the focus has been entirely on preventing the misuse of controlled substances, with almost everybody forgetting about the fact that these same controlled substances are also essential medicines.
So nurses in Ukraine have to hand-deliver syringes of morphine, an outdated practice in the age of oral morphine. But there simply aren't pill forms available to patients in this country. We were there when Artur's nurse arrived with his painkillers.
The medicine only lasts for approximately 2 hours. So patients are spending a lot of time in pain.
That means Artur only gets a few hours of pain relief. So he's had to look for another possible way to end his agony.
To watch Arturo reach under his pillow as he's talking about potentially ending his own life and then just pulling out this gun, that I thought maybe he's got the gun for protection. But no, he keeps the gun under his pillow for when the pain may be too bad.
Nadia Zhukovskaya understands the desperation that pain can cause. Her son Vlad was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in 2007 and was sent home to die. Under Ukraine's policy, patients who finish treatment or are deemed terminal are simply sent home and left to survive on the small government-approved dose to treat their pain.
У него сильные головные боли. оно не обезболивалось. И 5 этих ампул, они ничего не давали. У него эта головочка разрывалась.
Nadia remembers the day Vlad tried to end his suffering himself.
Он говорил, что я один раз разобьюсь и уже не буду чувствовать этой боли.
Vlad survived the suicide attempt and went on to live 2 more years. He passed away shortly before our visit.
Влад и другие, они же ушли на тот свет замордованными. Они ушли, не просто ушли, они замученные.
But the torment is not over for this mother. The images of watching her son suffer has left scars. In another town, in another country, Fatima is dying of breast cancer. The larger tumor on her left breast is noticeably infected with a large gaping wound. Fatima's family says she cries out in agony all hours of the day.
As you see, she lives in a remote area and she has no access to morphine.
Dr. Abhijit Dam runs a small palliative care clinic. He heard reports of Fatima's condition and came to this village on the fringes of Calcutta, India, to investigate.
She has severe pain. She can't sleep at night. She's constipated.
In India, the same kind of cumbersome red tape that troubles Ukraine makes it difficult for doctors like Dr. Dam to provide adequate pain relief. So he's forced to make do with an assortment of drugs to ease Fatima's ailments.
I mean, this is really difficult to watch. And it's particularly difficult considering that, with a 2 rupee medication, she would not be screaming.
In this country, we still fear opioids. Now, when we are afraid, we are no longer rational.
Dr. M.R. Rajagopal is a pioneer in palliative care in India. He says the narcotics laws are so strict here, doctors usually just avoid prescribing morphine.
So what do? We bring in very stringent narcotic regulations, which effectively stops medical use of morphine.
The few doctors who dare to use it are under such strict scrutiny, they must account for every milligram of morphine, or they could face jail time.
So what's palliative care like? It doesn't exist for 99% of the people in this country. If you have agonizing pain, you simply suffer.
In his attempt to ease the suffering, Dr. Rajagopal has been working with his state government in Kerala, India, to loosen its narcotics laws.
We together built a system of making low-cost morphine and having it available.
Now, doctors in Kerala can write prescriptions for morphine and patients can take the treatment at home, alone. Dr. Rajagopal says there is no reason why this success can't be nationwide.
I fully believe that in this country where low-cost opium is available, not giving it and not permitting someone to live with some dignity, allowing him to be tortured like this, is certainly a violation of human rights.
Next, a medical Robin Hood.
If we are stopped, we will be taken to prison.
Risking his freedom to free others from pain.
In Ukraine, a mix of strict narcotics laws and bureaucratic red tape are keeping thousands in pain from getting morphine. But this man is on his own personal mission to get painkillers to those in need.
It has about 7 milligrams, 8 milligrams of morphine in it, I understand.
A medical Robin Hood, Sergei Pisyurnik is risking his own freedom by taking painkillers from patients who don't need it and giving it to those who do.
So is this legal what you're doing?
Чи це законно те, що ти робиш?
Нет, за это, если нас остановят, посадят в тюрьму.
No, if we are stopped, we will be taken to prison.
If caught, Sergei could face 3 to 5 years in jail for distributing illegal drugs. On Sergei's list of stops, a familiar face, Artur Shumanov.
Состояние Артура. Он не ходил, он самостоятельно, по-моему, даже в туалет не мог ходить.
Only moments after receiving the dose of painkillers, Artur is on his feet and he's able to go outside and look after his animals.
Он меня выручил. Болит, конечно, но живу. Уже 1,5 года живу. Благодаря ему. Спасибо, шеф.
We wanted to find out why the Ukrainian government is letting their people suffer. So we met with Yuri Gubsky, a palliative care specialist with the Ukrainian Ministry of Health. He says morphine pills are not on the official list of medicines and treatments for a reason.
Фармацевтические фирмы не представляют заявок на регистрацию таких препаратов.
Gubsky says it comes down to demand. Doctors are not prescribing morphine, so pharmaceutical companies don't ask for it to be registered. But Dietrich Lohmann of Human Rights Watch says doctors are unwilling to prescribe the drug because of all the bureaucratic hurdles.
There are basic and inexpensive steps that you can take that will have an immediate effect on the lives of tens of thousands of people.
Artur is one of those thousands. He died alone and in pain not long after our visit. But there is one country that is stepping up to help its own people. Of all places, Uganda. This country, which has been plagued by civil war and poverty, has amazingly made palliative care a right for all of its citizens.
Palliative care is not intended to cure, but to improve the quality of life of people facing death.
Dr. Jack Jagwe is a former deputy director with the Ugandan Health Ministry. He says most of Uganda's patients live in rural communities, where there is a shortage of doctors to prescribe morphine.
People here don't want to die in hospital when they have a life-threatening illness. They want to die in their villages with their relatives around.
So a few years ago, the Ugandan government amended its laws to allow nurses and clinical officers to prescribe morphine. Today, nurses like Betty Bifabusa are able to legally administer morphine to patients in remote locations without a doctor. We had a chance to tag along with Betty as she made her home visits. We made our way through the trees to a makeshift hut of ropes and mud to see a man suffering from penile cancer.
You can imagine the situation there.
Betty and her team have been visiting Kasheja Karveri every week since last July.
He's feeling very weak. He has dizziness. But then when you look at him, he's very pale.
He's so weak that Kasheja needs his 7-year-old son, Fred, for even the most basic tasks.
Everything.
Betty says Kasheja's cancer is so advanced, it's eating away at his body.
He's saying he's too weak to do anything. Okay. That's what he told me.
To ease his suffering, Kasheja has been prescribed liquid morphine, which he takes throughout the day. He never keeps his bottle too far from reach.
Currently, he's taking 2 meals after 4 hours and then 4 meals at night.
And on this day, with his pain under control, Kasheja had one last request of Betty before she left, to find clothing so Fred could be properly dressed.
So I still promised him we are going to look around maybe from our children. Sometimes that's how we help them.
I think what happened in Uganda is replicable. It could happen in many other countries around the world.
But critics say it's not happening in enough countries, and change will only come when the international community accepts that the war on drugs is curtailing the treatment of medical pain.
This blunt acts that is just, looking at preventing misuse, preventing misuse, preventing misuse. And what you see is that, now we have collateral damage from that war on drugs, which is millions of patients in pain who can't get access to the medications that they need.
The United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, or UNODC, leads the global effort to fight narcotics trafficking.
The report we launched today paints a sobering picture of the threat posed by illegal drugs.
We went to their annual meeting in late June and presented our findings to the executive director of the UNODC.
It seems like one of the side effects of the efforts to curtail illicit narcotics actually also curtail legal medical narcotics.
Unfortunately, you're right. In some parts, especially in developing countries, there is not enough access to this kind of licit medicines.
We need to be such a nuisance that officials say, well, you know, it's easier to do what they're asking us to do than to have to keep up with, you know, with them knocking on our doors.
Gesheja died just a few hours after we visited him. But unlike so many families in countries around the world where morphine isn't available, it was the simple solution of providing pain meds paired with a little bit of extra kindness that meant this young boy didn't have to watch his father pass away in anguish.
Next, he sees dead people.
There's one right there in the corner there.
And he talks to them too.
Our tour is one of those many who are living in pain because they can't get access to painkillers. As part of a worldwide investigation into this problem, a group of my graduate students from the University of British Columbia School of Journalism visited Ukraine to see how and why so many people are living in agony. Our first stop was the home of this former decorated KGB colonel.
Когда болит, мне ничего не хочется. Я лежу здесь и все. Я кричу ночью здесь.
Our tour has stage 4 prostate cancer, and because of strict narcotics laws, he has limited access to morphine, a standard in pain treatment. Our tour has found his own way to dull
that brings is nearly impossible. The journalism school at the University of British Columbia spent nearly a year investigating why that is. And tonight, we have this special report.
In a remote village in the Ukrainian countryside sits a small cottage, run down, isolated, and desolate. It's the home where Artur Shumanov has gone to die.
In the world of pain treatment, morphine is considered the gold standard, one of the strongest and most effective drugs available. But in some countries, getting access to morphine and the relief